There was a seat for everyone except me. I stood in the doorway of the dining room holding a small wrapped gift in both hands. The house smelled like cinnamon-baked ham and pine. Someone had taken time with the table candles lit, name cards in careful cursive crystal glasses catching the soft light. My name wasn't there. At the head of the table sat my older brother Colin, still broad-shouldered, still wearing that smirk like it was stitched to his face. He was slicing into the honey ham like he owned the moment. Maybe he thought he did. Lana was beside him. My cousin. She wore one of my mother's old scarves, silk pale green, the one Mom used to save for Christmas Eve services. Lana sipped from her wine glass like she belonged here, like she'd always belonged. I looked around again. Maybe I missed something. Maybe a chair had been pulled away to make room for the pies. But no, the table was set, full, complete, without me. I turned to my mother Joyce. She was arranging sweet potatoes in a dish with marshmallows avoiding my eyes. When I opened my mouth to speak, she glanced at the turkey like it had just asked her a question. "I think—" "You forgot my seat," I said, keeping my voice low. Colin didn't even pause chewing. Without looking up, he said it flat clean like it cost him nothing. "It's outside. With the dogs." There was a breathless silence. Lana let out a quiet snort. One of the second cousins shifted in his chair. A fork clicked against porcelain. But no one said a word. No one laughed. No one objected. I stood there, cheeks burning. I wasn't sure what stung more, that he said it, or that everyone else let it stay in the air like a prayer no one would claim. I could have turned. I could have said something loud, made a scene. But instead, I stepped forward, set the small box down in front of Colin's plate, then leaned in close enough that only he could hear "check under your plate." And I walked out. Didn't wait for anyone to stop me. Didn't look back. Just stepped into the December night and let the cold tell me I was still alive. When I was little, Christmas was my favorite day in the whole world. Back then, the tree stood by the living room window, not some carefully curated photo op, but a slightly lopsided pine with mismatched ornaments we'd collected over the years. Colin and I would argue over whose turn it was to hang the glass reindeer, the one with the cracked antler. Dad would break up the fight by holding it himself and declaring this one's for peace. And peace doesn't pick sides. That was our dad. Russell Blake. He smelled like engine oil and cedar chips and always had a grease stain on his shirt even at Christmas. But when he smiled, the whole room felt steady. He'd ruffle my hair and say, "You've got grit, kid. You're gonna outlast all of us." I didn't know what he meant then. I thought he was just being funny. Now I think, maybe he saw something even I hadn't. Colin used to be different too. He and I once built a snow fort so high we couldn't see over it. I slipped on the ice trying to climb it and busted my lip, and he cried harder than I did, brought me inside yelling for Mom, wrapped me in a blanket and said, "You're not allowed to die. Ever." That version of him, the one who gave me the last piece of fudge and let me sit shotgun when we went to get firewood, I don't know where he went. I don't know when he left. And Mom, she used to sing while cooking. Her voice was soft, barely in tune, but I remember the way she'd hum Silent Night while peeling potatoes. Sometimes she'd twirl in her slipper's apron, flaring just a bit when she thought no one was looking. I looked. She used to make sure my favorite mug white with faded holly leaves was waiting on the table with hot cocoa and too many marshmallows. I didn't see it this year, didn't expect to, but I still noticed. What happened to that house? What happened to the people who lived in it? Was I the only one who remembered the good parts? Because somewhere along the way, the laughter turned sharp. The warmth cooled. And Colin started speaking for the family like it was his to interpret. My voice got smaller. My name showed up less. Until one day it stopped showing up at all. And still I kept showing up. Hoping it was just grief. Hoping it was just stress. Hoping they'd see me. But hope can go blind if you feed it long enough. And I think mine did. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a fight or a slammed door or some dramatic falling out. No one yelled at me to leave. No one said you're not family anymore. They just stopped including me. At first it was subtle. I'd call to check in on Dad. This was back when his memory started slipping, when he'd forget the names of tools, or call me that girl on the phone. And Colin would answer upbeat as ever, "Dad's resting right now. I'll let him know you called." A few days later, I'd try again. "He's in a fog today. Not the best time." Eventually, I stopped hearing Dad's voice altogether. Just updates filtered through Colin, always wrapped in concern. Always protecting someone. Mom started deferring too. I'd ask how she was holding up, and she'd say things like, "Colin's been such a help. He really knows how to handle things. It's just easier when things go through him." At first, I didn't push. I told myself they were tired, that maybe I was being sensitive. I was living in Austin then, working long hours at a marketing firm. I sent money home every month, paid part of the roof repair without being asked, booked flights back for every major holiday. Still, I started noticing things. One Christmas, my old stocking was missing from the fireplace mantel. I found it later stuffed in the back of the hallway closet. The framed photo of me and Dad, taken on the day he gave me his old toolbox, vanished from the wall. In its place was a new photo, Colin and Lana at the garden center, holding a flat of mums like they'd just saved the family homestead. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Then, one Sunday, I logged onto social media and saw pictures from what they called an impromptu family dinner. All of them. Around the same table I used to help set, laughing, toes touching under the chairs I once sanded down with Dad. No one had called me. No one had even thought to mention it. When I asked Mom about it, she said it was last minute. "You live so far. We figured you wouldn't want the hassle." She didn't hear the way her words landed. Or maybe she did and chose to let them land anyway. From then on, the pattern was clear. Decisions were made without me. About Dad's treatment, about the house, about finances. Colin explained everything after the fact, always with a tone that made it sound like he was doing me a favor. "Didn't want to bother you while you're busy. It's just easier this way." Easier. For whom I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just confused. Off balance. Like someone had slowly been turning the volume down on my voice until I couldn't hear it myself. They never told me to go. They just stopped saving me a seat. The first time I realized Lana had moved in, she answered the phone from my mother's kitchen. I could hear the ceramic clink of the spoon against Mom's favorite mug, the one with the cardinals on it. Lana laughed at something in the background, Colin probably, and said, "Hold on, your mom's elbow deep in pie dough." Your mom. That word sat heavy in my chest for days. I asked Joyce about it a week later, careful not to sound accusatory. "Is Lana staying with you now, just helping out? She's been a godsend. You know how things have been." A godsend. This was the same Lana who 3 years earlier had borrowed Mom's sapphire earrings and claimed she thought they were hers, who lied about a missing checkbook at Thanksgiving, who once cried on the porch and said, "I don't know why everyone thinks I'm the bad one." And now here she was, setting the table I used to set, wearing the scarves Mom used to wrap around her shoulders on snowy mornings, leaving handwritten notes on the fridge, chickens in the oven. Took Mom to PT. At first, I told myself it was practical. They needed someone around. And I hadn't been, not physically anyway. But slowly, Lana stopped being a helper and became the one who knows where everything is. When I called to ask how Dad's doctor visit went, Lana was the one who answered. When I sent flowers for Mom's birthday, Lana texted me a thank you with a photo of Mom holding the bouquet standing beside her. The caption read, "She loved them, great day, I wasn't in the picture." I wasn't in any picture anymore. I started asking questions. Colin's answers were vague. "She's just around to help with errands. It's not like she's taking over." But when I visited for Dad's memorial, Lana greeted guests at the door. She wore a black dress, simple and neat, the same one I'd worn to my uncle's funeral years ago. I recognized the hemline the way it fell just above the knee. I had left it in the closet upstairs. It wasn't hers. She stood by the coffee table pouring cider, telling stories about Dad like she'd known him better than I had. People nodded. They smiled. They believed her. And I just stood there, coat still on hands, cold, watching my place disappear piece by piece. Later that evening, I tried to bring it up to Mom. I didn't want to accuse. I just needed to know where I stood. She's just trying to help Marin. You've always been too sensitive about things. That's when I realized it. It wasn't that they forgot me. It was that they'd found someone easier to replace me with. 2 months before Christmas, I drove up to the house without calling ahead. I wasn't planning to go inside. I thought maybe I'd just sit in the driveway, look at the old porch swing, and remind myself of who I used to be when this place still felt like mine. But when I pulled up, the driveway was empty. No sign of Colin's truck. No Lana in the window, no motion in the kitchen. I stepped out anyway. My key still worked. The house was quieter than I remembered. No music, no TV. Just the hum of the heater and the faint creak of floorboards that still spoke when no one else would. I found myself drifting toward Dad's study. It was the only room no one had rearranged. Everything else in the house felt slightly off, like it had been staged to look familiar, but something was missing behind the eyes. But his study was untouched. The old recliner still sagged in the middle. His toolbox sat beneath the bookshelf, paint-chipped and rusted. A clock ticked softly by the window, the one with the dusty face and brass hands that always ran 10 minutes slow. And then I saw it. The cabinet in the corner. Dark wood brass handle. I'd seen him open it a dozen times growing up, but I never paid attention to what went inside. I knelt down and pulled. It stuck at first, then gave way. Inside a small metal safe. My breath caught. I remembered something suddenly. A long time ago, maybe high school, he'd tucked a tiny key inside his favorite book. Said it was for just in case. I reached up, scanned the shelves. Travels with Charlie by Steinbeck. Worn spine-cracked leather. The key was still there. When the safe clicked open, I didn't know what I expected. Maybe old receipts, maybe nothing. But there it was. An envelope. Thick, cream paper. My name on the front written in his hand. I sat down on the floor, knees to my chest, and opened it. Inside, a notarized will. Dated 2 weeks before he died. Every asset, this house, the savings, the land in Monument Valley, was left to me. Colin's name wasn't mentioned once. Neither was Lana's. And behind the will, a note, folded, yellowed slightly at the edges. It said, "Marin, I see it now. I didn't before, and I'm sorry. You never asked for anything. You just stayed. You protected me when no one else did. This house is yours. You've earned it. Love, Dad." I didn't cry at the funeral. I cried on that floor. Not for the house, but because in the end, someone saw me. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I dressed in dark jeans and a navy coat, nothing dramatic, nothing that screamed, "Look at me." I brought a single box wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with twine. It was Christmas Eve. The Blake house still had the same string of colored lights blinking unevenly. The wreath on the door was slightly crooked. Someone had replaced the welcome mat. It used to say, "Home is where Dad is." Now it read, "Joyful Season." I knocked once, then let myself in. No one heard me at first. The dining room was already full. Colin at the head of the table, Lana to his right, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Mom sat across, smiling in that soft, distant way that used to be reserved for guests. My seat wasn't there. Again. This time I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, placed the box in the center of the table, and looked directly at Colin. He blinked. "Marin, what are you—" I didn't give him the satisfaction of finishing the question. "Check under your plate," I said, voice low, but firm. He glanced down, lifted the charger, and found a single key. It was old brass, worn smooth with use. Dad's safe key. Colin's eyes flicked up to mine. Confusion first. Then a flicker of something else, nervousness. No, not yet. He didn't know enough to be afraid. Joyce rose halfway, her smile faltering. "Marin, this isn't— I'm not staying," I said. "Just wanted to drop that off." Lana reached for the box. "Is it a gift?" I looked at her for the first time all evening. Looked through her, really. In a way. She flushed, hand retreating. I turned toward the door. No one followed. No one asked me to stay. Not really. Colin was already lifting the box's lid. Joyce said, "Wait, what is this?" I was halfway down the front steps when I heard chairs scrape, voices rise. I didn't stop. The night was sharp air cold against my throat. I walked back to my car, sat for a moment in the driver's seat, let the silence settle, because what they found in that box wasn't wrapped in malice. It was wrapped in truth. The copy of Dad's will, the letter, a small photograph, me and him, shoulder to shoulder from the summer I helped him rebuild the fence. Nothing dramatic, just enough. Let them read it in their own voices, in their own time. Let them sit at that table full, but with one chair always conspicuously empty. Would they still pretend I was just too sensitive? That I imagined it all? And if so, who left that key? They started calling the next morning. First, it was Joyce. Just a voicemail. "Hi, sweetie. We read what you left. It caught us off guard, that's all. We should talk. I think we all just need to breathe and maybe come together. As a family. No apology. Just caught off guard." Then Colin sent a text. "Can we meet? There's a lot to discuss. I think we all misunderstood each other. Not a word about the will. Or the letter." Then Lana messaged me. Just a sad face emoji. Nothing else. For a week, I let the messages pile up. They tried new angles, confusion, nostalgia, even guilt. "Your dad wouldn't want this rift, Marin. We're still your family. Let's not let bitterness ruin the holidays." But bitterness hadn't ruined anything. Erasure had. And the thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to prove a point. I just didn't want to go back. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stopped responding. I think that unsettled them more than anything else. One afternoon, Colin tried showing up at my office unannounced. My assistant sent him away. I never told her to. She just said afterward he didn't look like someone you'd want to see. She was right. A few days later, Mom called again. This time I picked up. Her voice was quiet, fragile. "Marin, I think we made mistakes, but this family, it's still yours too." I waited a beat, then said I was always there. "You just lived easier when I wasn't." She didn't respond, not because she disagreed, but because there was nothing left to say. 3 weeks after Christmas, I mailed one last envelope. No return address. Inside, the original photo of Dad and me, the one from the fence rebuild, the one that had been quietly taken down from the hallway wall years ago. I didn't include a note. I didn't need to. A week later, a neighbor sent me a picture. I hadn't asked for it, she just thought I'd want to know. The photo had been rehung. Not inside the Blake house. Not over the fireplace or beside the dining table. It was tacked up in the old shed behind the garden Dad's tool shed. The one place no one else ever went. There it was slightly crooked, hanging above the workbench. Just a girl and her father standing side by side. Smiling like the world made sense. No caption, no explanation. I stared at the image for a long time, then closed my phone. That house. It may belong to me on paper, but the real inheritance wasn't brick or timber. It was this knowing. I never needed them to admit what they did, because the truth already exists, and it doesn't go away when ignored. I still live in Austin. Still drink from that holly mug I took back quietly after the memorial. It chips a little more each winter. I let it. Sometimes people ask if I ever reconciled with my family. I tell them I was always part of the story. They just wrote around me. And now they don't get to write me out. I never asked to be seen. I just wanted to exist. If you've ever been erased but chose to remain true, just leave a single heart icon.